March 15, 1944. The morning mist clung to the rolling hills of occupied France like a shroud, masking the movements of 41 German officers who believed themselves invisible in their carefully concealed positions along the Normandy coast. Inside a cramped resistance safe house in Cannes, 17-year-old Marie Dubois carefully folded what appeared to be an innocent love letter, her hands trembling not from nerves, but from the weight of what seemed like the most ridiculous plan anyone had ever conceived. The German intelligence officers monitoring local mail would surely dismiss it as teenage foolishness, which was exactly what made it brilliant. Before we dive into this story, make sure to subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. It really helps support the channel. What these seasoned military professionals could never have imagined was that this seemingly naive girl's romantic correspondence would expose their entire coastal defense network in a way that months of traditional espionage had failed to accomplish. Marie pressed her back against the cold stone wall of the basement, listening to the muffled voices of her resistance cell leaders arguing above. For 3 weeks, they had attempted to map German officer positions along the coast using conventional methods: stolen documents, bribed informants, photographic reconnaissance. Every attempt had failed. The German security apparatus, led by Major Klaus Weber, a meticulous intelligence officer from Berlin, had proven too sophisticated for their amateur spy network. Weber himself sat 12 kilometers away in his requisitioned chateau, reviewing intercepted resistance communications with growing satisfaction. His counterintelligence unit had successfully identified and neutralized 17 resistance operatives in the past month. The 41 officers under his coordination maintained radio silence, used coded communications, and changed positions according to strict protocols. By every measure, their coastal defense intelligence remained secure. Marie's plan had emerged during what the resistance initially dismissed as a childish outburst. During a particularly heated planning session, she had declared that the men were overthinking everything. "You're trying to be clever spies in a spy movie," she had said, her voice carrying the exasperation that only teenagers could muster. "But what if we did something so stupid that nobody would suspect it was actually smart?" The cell leader, Jacques Moreau, a former postal worker turned resistance coordinator, had initially laughed at her proposal. A love letter campaign? It sounded like something from a romantic novel, not serious intelligence work. But as Marie outlined her strategy, the absurdity began to reveal its underlying logic. The German occupation forces maintained strict surveillance over all local communications, but they processed thousands of personal letters daily. Love letters between young French women and German soldiers were common enough that they rarely warranted detailed scrutiny, especially when they appeared to contain nothing but romantic nonsense and requests for small favors. Marie's innovation lay in weaponizing the very banality of teenage romance. She would compose letters that appeared to be from a love-struck French girl trying to arrange secret meetings with her German boyfriend. Each letter would request that he meet her at specific locations at particular times, complete with detailed descriptions of landmarks and nearby military installations that would seem like natural romantic backdrop details. The brilliance of the deception operated on multiple levels. First, the letters would be deliberately crafted to trigger the ego and protective instincts of German officers. Marie understood that men, particularly those isolated from home, responded predictably to female attention and romantic flattery. Second, the requests for meetings would provide legitimate reasons for officers to reveal their locations and schedules. Third, any officer who responded would inadvertently confirm not only his position, but also his willingness to engage in unauthorized personal relationships. Weber's intelligence protocols required routine monitoring of local correspondence, but his analysts processed romantic letters through abbreviated review procedures. The sheer volume of such communications made detailed analysis impractical, and the content rarely contained actionable intelligence. This systematic blind spot in German surveillance created exactly the vulnerability Marie intended to exploit. Her first letter required 2 days to compose. Writing in careful schoolgirl handwriting, she created Claudette, a naive 17-year-old who had fallen desperately in love with a kind German officer she had glimpsed during a patrol. The letter overflowed with innocent romantic language, misspelled words that suggested genuine youth, and cultural references that demonstrated authentic local knowledge. "My dearest Hans," the letter began, using the most common German name she could imagine. "I cannot stop thinking about you since I saw you near the old lighthouse yesterday evening. You looked so handsome in your uniform, and when you smiled at my little sister, my heart nearly stopped beating. I know this is very forward of me, but I simply must see you again." The critical intelligence gathering occurred within what appeared to be romantic requests. "I will be waiting by the stone bridge near Saint-Pierre tomorrow at sunset, the one with the old mill wheel where the road turns toward the coast defense positions. If you cannot come then, perhaps you could meet me Thursday morning by the church bell tower that overlooks the harbor fortifications. I know these places might be near your work, but they are so beautiful and romantic." Each suggested meeting location had been carefully selected by the resistance to provide visual confirmation of German officer positions. The stone bridge offered clear sight lines to 3 suspected command posts. The church bell tower provided observation over suspected communication installations. Marie's innocent romantic geography mapped directly onto priority intelligence targets. Jacques arranged for the letter to be dropped into the German postal collection system through a sympathetic postal worker. Within 48 hours, the response exceeded their most optimistic expectations. The first reply came from Oberleutnant Friedrich Koch, stationed at Coastal Battery Position 17. His letter, written in careful French, expressed flattered surprise at receiving such unexpected attention. More importantly, he confirmed his assignment to lighthouse sector surveillance and suggested alternative meeting locations that revealed the exact boundaries of his patrol area. "Sweet Claudette," Koch wrote, "your letter brought sunshine to my difficult duties here by the coastal watching posts. I regret that I cannot meet you at the stone bridge, as my responsibilities require me to remain near the lighthouse observation points during evening hours. However, I could perhaps see you Saturday afternoon near the market square, when my shift monitoring the harbor communications ends at 1400 hours. Marie read Koch's response with growing excitement. His single letter had confirmed 3 separate intelligence targets: his specific duty station, his operational schedule, and the location of previously unidentified communication monitoring equipment. Better yet, his earnest tone suggested genuine romantic interest rather than security suspicion. The success of the first exchange convinced Jacques to expand the operation. Marie would create a network of fictional romantic correspondences, each targeting different sectors of the German coastal defense network. Claudette would continue pursuing her lighthouse romance, while new characters like Brigitte and Simone would develop relationships with officers in other areas. Weber's intelligence unit processed Marie's letters through standard romantic correspondence protocols without triggering deeper investigation. His analysts, all male and focused primarily on military communications, lacked both the cultural sensitivity and psychological insight to recognize the sophisticated manipulation hidden within apparently authentic, feminine romantic expression. The second phase of Marie's campaign demonstrated her evolving understanding of German military psychology. Rather than immediately pressing for sensitive information, she allowed her fictional relationships to develop naturally through multiple exchanges. Claudette expressed concern about Friedrich's safety, asked innocent questions about his daily routine, and offered to bring him home-cooked meals during his long duty shifts. Friedrich's responses grew increasingly detailed and personal. Separated from family and female companionship for months, he found genuine emotional comfort in Claudette's attention. His letters revealed not only tactical information, but also the psychological strain affecting German coastal defenders as they awaited the anticipated Allied invasion. "The waiting is the most difficult part," Friedrich wrote in his 4th letter. "My commander, Major Schmidt, maintains that our positions along this sector are impregnable, but we all know that something significant approaches. Yesterday, Colonel Brenner visited our lighthouse station to inspect the new radar equipment installation, and even he seemed nervous about our defensive preparations." Marie's fictional correspondence network expanded to include 12 different German officers across a 30-kilometer stretch of coastline. Each relationship developed its own personality and dynamic. but all followed her original template of romantic manipulation combined with intelligence extraction. Some officers were lonely and talkative, others cautious but still responsive to feminine attention. The intelligence gathered through these romantic exchanges far exceeded what traditional espionage methods had achieved. Marie's letters confirmed the locations of radar installations, communication posts, ammunition storage facilities, command bunkers, and observation points. More significantly, they revealed the German assessment of their own defensive capabilities and the identities of key personnel in the coastal defense network. Weber's first indication of a security breach came not from intercepted communications or surveillance reports, but from an observation that initially seemed insignificant. His aide reported an unusual pattern in mail delivery requests from coastal positions. Several officers had independently requested permission to send personal correspondence through expedited channels, citing urgent family matters. When Weber investigated these requests more closely, he discovered that multiple officers were engaged in romantic correspondence with local French women. While such relationships violated regulations, they were common enough that Weber initially planned only routine disciplinary action. However, the timing and geographic distribution of these relationships struck him as potentially suspicious. Marie's operation reached its climax during the first week of April, when her accumulated intelligence revealed the complete German coastal defense network in unprecedented detail. The resistance now possessed detailed maps of fortifications, schedules of patrol rotations, identities and personalities of key officers, and assessments of German morale and preparation levels. More importantly, Marie had identified a critical vulnerability in German coastal security. The 41 officers involved in her correspondence network represented a significant percentage of the sector's leadership. Their romantic entanglements had created emotional leverage that could potentially be exploited during critical operations. The revelation of Marie's deception occurred through an accident that demonstrated both her success and the dangers inherent in her approach. Oberleutnant Koch, deeply infatuated with his fictional Claudette, decided to surprise her with an unscheduled visit to her supposed residence. When he discovered that no such person existed at the address provided in her letters, his romantic disappointment quickly transformed into security paranoia. Koch's report to Weber triggered an immediate investigation that unraveled the entire correspondence network within 72 hours. German counterintelligence analysts, applying proper scrutiny to Marie's letters for the first time, immediately recognized the sophisticated intelligence operation hidden beneath the romantic facade. Weber's investigation revealed the scope of the security breach with startling clarity. 41 officers had inadvertently compromised their positions, schedules, and operational details through romantic correspondence with fictional French women. The cumulative intelligence loss represented the most significant single security failure in his sector since the beginning of the occupation. The German response combined damage control with counterintelligence operations. All compromised officers faced immediate transfer away from sensitive positions. Weber implemented new communication security protocols that eliminated personal correspondence privileges for coastal defense personnel. Most significantly, German intelligence began systematic analysis of all personal communications for potential intelligence gathering operations. Marie's identification and capture occurred with tragic inevitability once Weber understood the scope and sophistication of the correspondence network. The writing style analysis, geographic knowledge demonstrated in the letters, and logistical requirements for managing multiple fictional relationships all pointed toward a single individual operating from within the Caen resistance network. The arrest took place during a routine document inspection that Marie could not have anticipated or avoided. German security forces, conducting house-to-house searches for resistance materials, discovered her correspondence drafts hidden beneath floorboards in the safe house basement. The carefully preserved letters, complete with detailed intelligence summaries and target assessments, provided undeniable evidence of her espionage activities. Weber interrogated Marie personally, fascinated by the psychological sophistication of her operation despite her youth. He recognized that she had successfully exploited fundamental weaknesses in German security culture. the tendency to underestimate civilian resistance capabilities, the psychological isolation of occupation forces, and the systematic blind spots in communication surveillance protocols. "Your approach was remarkably sophisticated," Weber told Marie during their final interrogation session. "You understood something about human nature that our entire intelligence apparatus missed. These men were not weak or foolish, they were simply human." Marie's response reflected both defiance and pride in her accomplishment. "You trained them to be suspicious of spies and saboteurs," she replied, "but you never taught them to be suspicious of love letters from silly French girls. Sometimes the most obvious hiding place is the best one." The intelligence Marie gathered through her romantic correspondence proved invaluable during the Allied invasion preparation. Resistance networks transmitted her detailed coastal defense information to London, where it contributed to invasion planning and target prioritization. The knowledge of German officer positions, fortification locations, and communication networks helped minimize Allied casualties during the initial landing operations. The psychological impact of Marie's operation extended beyond its immediate intelligence value. The revelation that a teenage girl had successfully manipulated dozens of German officers through romantic deception became a powerful symbol of resistance ingenuity and occupying force vulnerability. Stories of her operation spread through both resistance networks and German security services, demonstrating that effective opposition could emerge from unexpected sources using unconventional methods. Weber's career survived the security breach, but the incident fundamentally altered German counterintelligence protocols throughout occupied France. New regulations strictly prohibited personal correspondence for military personnel in sensitive positions. Communication monitoring procedures expanded to include detailed analysis of all civilian letters, regardless of apparent content. Most significantly, German security training began addressing the potential for intelligence operations disguised as innocent personal relationships. The broader implications of Marie's success highlighted critical weaknesses in military occupation strategies. Traditional security measures focused on preventing organized resistance activities, sabotage, armed attacks, communication intercepts, but failed to anticipate creative civilian adaptations that exploited cultural and psychological vulnerabilities rather than operational ones. Marie's capture marked the end of her intelligence career, but her operational innovations influenced resistance activities throughout the war. Other networks adopted similar approaches, using romantic correspondence, family relationships, and commercial transactions as covers for intelligence-gathering operations. The fundamental principle she demonstrated, that apparent innocence and cultural authenticity could provide better operational security than sophisticated tradecraft, became standard resistance doctrine. The 41 German officers whose positions Marie revealed faced varying consequences for their security breaches. Most received transfers to less sensitive assignments, while others faced formal disciplinary action for violating personal correspondence regulations. However, Weber's investigation concluded that the officers had acted within existing protocols and could not reasonably have detected the sophisticated deception without specific training in psychological manipulation techniques. Friedrich Koch, Marie's primary correspondent, experienced the most severe personal consequences. His genuine emotional investment in the fictional Claudette created lasting psychological trauma when he discovered the manipulation. According to post-war interviews, he continued writing letters to the false address for months after learning of the deception, unable to accept that his romantic relationship had been entirely fabricated. The strategic impact of Marie's intelligence gathering became evident during the invasion itself, when Allied forces demonstrated precise knowledge of German coastal positions and communication networks. Resistance groups used her detailed maps to guide sabotage operations that disrupted German communications at critical moments. The psychological preparation she provided, revealing German officer personalities, morale levels, and defensive concerns, helped Allied commanders predict and exploit German tactical responses. Weber's post-war assessment of Marie's operation acknowledged its profound impact on German security thinking. She taught us that our greatest vulnerability was not our military positions or communication systems, but our humanity, he wrote in his memoirs. We had trained extensively to detect professional spies, but we never considered that someone might weaponize loneliness and romantic desire. It was a lesson in unconventional warfare that changed how we approached occupation security. The documentation of Marie's correspondence network provided historians with unique insights into both resistance operations and German military psychology during the occupation. Her letters revealed the daily experiences, fears, and motivations of individual soldiers in ways that official reports never captured. The German responses demonstrated how isolation, uncertainty, and human emotional needs could compromise even well-trained military personnel. Modern intelligence analysts study Marie's operation as a classic example of social engineering applied to military intelligence gathering. Her success demonstrated principles that remain relevant in contemporary espionage: the power of appearing harmless, the value of exploiting human psychological needs, and the effectiveness of hiding complex operations within simple, culturally authentic communications. The legacy of Marie's romantic correspondence campaign extends beyond its immediate wartime impact. Her story became part of resistance folklore throughout occupied Europe, inspiring similar operations and demonstrating that effective opposition could emerge from unexpected sources using unconventional methods. The fundamental insight she provided, that human emotional vulnerability could be strategically exploited through authentic cultural performance, influenced intelligence operations for decades after the war ended. And that concludes our story. If you made it this far, please share your thoughts in the comments. What part of this historical account surprised you most? Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from World War II and check out the video on screen for another incredible tale from history. Until next time.